Most people think discipline is about willpower. They think it's about gritting your teeth, white-knuckling through discomfort, and somehow forcing yourself to do things you don't want to do through sheer mental strength. And that's exactly why most people fail. Discipline isn't about willpower. Willpower is finite. Willpower runs out. Willpower is what weak people rely on because they don't understand how the human mind actually works. Real discipline is about systems. It's about psychology. It's about rewiring your brain and restructuring your environment so that the right actions become inevitable. By the time you finish this audiobook, you will not be the same person. That's not motivation speaking. That's neuroscience. Every strategy I'm about to share with you will physically change your brain. You will develop new neural pathways. You will break old patterns that have kept you stuck, and you will build an unshakable foundation of discipline that will serve you for the rest of your life. But here's what this is not. This is not another feel-good self-help book that tells you to believe in yourself. This is not about positive thinking or motivation. This is about cold, hard systems that work whether you feel like it or not. This is about forcing compliance from yourself using proven psychological principles that the most successful people in the world use every single day. If you're tired of starting and stopping, if you're sick of setting goals and never following through, if you're done being disappointed in yourself, then this is your solution. But only if you're ready to do the work. Only if you're ready to completely transform how you operate. Only if you're ready to join the small percentage of people who actually follow through on what they say they're going to do. Chapter 1. The discipline delusion that's keeping you weak. Let me destroy the biggest lie you've been told about discipline. You've been programmed to believe that discipline is about fighting yourself, that it's about forcing yourself to do things you hate, that successful people are just better at suffering than you are. This is complete nonsense, and it's the reason why 99% of people never develop real discipline. Here's the truth that no one wants to tell you. Discipline is not about willpower. Discipline is not about motivation. Discipline is not about being tougher or stronger than other people. Real discipline is about understanding human psychology and using it to your advantage. It's about designing systems that make the right choices automatic. It's about creating an environment where success is inevitable and failure becomes nearly impossible. Think about the people you admire most. The athletes who train every single day. The entrepreneurs who work when others sleep. The artists who create masterpieces while others scroll social media. Do you really think they wake up every morning excited to do hard things? Do you think they never feel lazy? Never feel unmotivated? Never want to quit? Of course they do. They're human. The difference is, they don't rely on feelings to drive their actions. They've built systems that operate independently of how they feel. They've created structures that force them to take the right actions even when every part of them wants to do something else. This is what I call the discipline operating system. And it's the foundation that everything else builds upon. Most people are running their lives on outdated software. They're using willpower when they should be using systems. They're trying to muscle through resistance when they should be eliminating it entirely. The first step to real discipline is understanding that you don't need to become a different person. You don't need to develop superhuman willpower. You don't need to love doing hard things. You just need to understand how your brain works and design your life accordingly. Your brain has two primary modes of operation: there's the prefrontal cortex, which handles conscious decision-making, planning, and impulse control. This is your logical brain. It's smart, but it's also limited. It gets tired. It gets overwhelmed. It can only handle so many decisions before it starts to break down. Then there's your basal ganglia, which handles automatic behaviors and habits. This is your subconscious brain. It's incredibly powerful, but it's not smart. It simply executes whatever patterns you've programmed into it, good or bad. Most people try to run everything through their prefrontal cortex. They rely on conscious decision-making for every action. Should I work out today? Should I eat this? Should I check my phone? Should I do this task or that task? By noon, their decision-making capacity is exhausted, and they default to whatever's easiest. Disciplined people do the opposite. They use their prefrontal cortex to design systems, then let their basal ganglia execute those systems automatically. They don't decide whether to work out every day. They've automated the decision. They don't debate what to eat. They've already planned their meals. They don't wonder what to work on. They've already structured their day. This is why motivation is useless. Motivation is trying to use your prefrontal cortex to override your natural programming. It works temporarily, but it's not sustainable. Real discipline is about reprogramming your basal ganglia so that the right actions become as automatic as brushing your teeth. But here's what most self-help gurus won't tell you. Building these systems requires initial discomfort. It requires you to do things that feel unnatural at first. It requires you to go against your current programming. And that's exactly what separates the disciplined from the undisciplined. Most people quit at the first sign of resistance. They try to build a new habit for a few days, feel uncomfortable, and give up. They tell themselves they're just not disciplined people. But discipline isn't a personality trait you're born with. It's a skill you develop through practice. The key is understanding that the discomfort is temporary, but the system is permanent. You only have to build the habit once, but you get to benefit from it forever. You only have to go through the initial resistance once, but then it becomes effortless. This means discipline is actually the path of least resistance, not most resistance. Undisciplined people think they're taking the easy path, but they're actually making their lives harder. They're constantly fighting themselves, constantly starting over, constantly dealing with the consequences of inconsistency. Disciplined people do the hard work once, up front, to make everything else easy. They invest in building systems that serve them for years. They endure short-term discomfort to create long-term ease. So stop thinking about discipline as a battle against yourself. Start thinking about it as an investment in yourself. Stop relying on willpower and start building systems. Stop trying to change your personality and start changing your environment. The moment you make this shift, everything becomes possible. Chapter 2. The Neuroscience of Forcing Change. Your brain is not designed for discipline. It's designed for survival. And in the modern world, those survival instincts are working against you. Understanding this is crucial because you can't fix a problem you don't understand. And you can't build discipline if you're fighting against your own biology. Let me explain what's happening in your brain when you try to be disciplined. Your limbic system, the emotional center of your brain, is constantly scanning for threats and rewards. It wants immediate gratification and safety. It wants you to avoid discomfort and seek pleasure. This system is fast, powerful, and operates below conscious awareness. Your prefrontal cortex, the rational part of your brain, can override these impulses, but only temporarily and at great cost. Every time you resist an impulse, every time you choose the hard path over the easy path, you're depleting what researchers call cognitive resources. This is why willpower feels exhausting. You're literally fighting a war in your head. But here's the breakthrough that changes everything. You can reprogram your limbic system. You can train your brain to crave the things that are good for you and avoid the things that are bad for you. You can make discipline feel natural instead of forced. This is called neuroplasticity, and it's the secret weapon of every highly disciplined person. Neuroplasticity means your brain is constantly changing based on your behavior. Every time you repeat an action, you strengthen the neural pathways associated with that action. Every time you resist an action, you weaken those pathways. Your brain literally rewires itself based on what you do consistently. This is why habits become easier over time. The first few weeks of a new habit feel difficult because you're creating new neural pathways from scratch. But once those pathways are established, the behavior becomes automatic. Your brain starts to expect that behavior and even crave it. The key is understanding how to accelerate this process. Most people try to build habits through repetition alone, but that's inefficient. You can hack your neuroplasticity by understanding the three core components of habit formation: cue, routine, and reward. The cue triggers the behavior. The routine is the behavior itself. The reward reinforces the behavior and makes you want to repeat it. Most people focus only on the routine, but the real power is in optimizing the cue and reward systems. For example, if you want to build a workout habit, most people just focus on the workout itself. But the disciplined approach is to create a powerful cue that automatically triggers the desire to work out, and a meaningful reward that makes you crave the next workout. The cue might be laying out your workout clothes the night before, so you see them first thing in the morning. The reward might be a specific post-workout meal you only eat after exercising, or checking off a calendar that tracks your progress. You're literally training your brain to associate working out with pleasure instead of pain. But here's where most people go wrong. They try to rely on external rewards like cheap meals or new clothes. These can work temporarily, but they don't create lasting change because they don't address the deeper psychological drivers of behavior. The most powerful rewards are intrinsic. They're related to identity, competence, and progress. When you complete a workout, you don't just burn calories. You become the type of person who works out. You prove to yourself that you can do hard things. You make progress toward a goal that matters to you. This is why identity-based habits are so much more powerful than outcome-based habits. Instead of saying, "I want to lose weight," you say, "I am a healthy person." Instead of, "I want to write a book," you say, "I am a writer." You start with the identity and let the behaviors follow naturally. Your brain will always move toward consistency with your identity. If you see yourself as a disciplined person, you'll naturally take disciplined actions. If you see yourself as someone who doesn't follow through, you'll sabotage your own efforts to maintain that consistency. This is also why social environment is so crucial. You become who you spend time with, because your brain is constantly absorbing social cues about what's normal and acceptable. If you're surrounded by undisciplined people, your brain will calibrate to that standard. If you're surrounded by disciplined people, you'll naturally rise to meet their level. The most advanced practitioners of discipline understand that they're not just changing their behavior, they're rewiring their entire nervous system. They're creating new default patterns that operate automatically. They're transforming their relationship with discomfort, challenge, and growth. Here's the most important part. This process is predictable and systematic. It's not about luck or genetics or personality. It's about understanding the principles of behavioral change and applying them consistently. You can literally engineer discipline into your life by following the right protocols. The first protocol is pattern interruption. You have to break your current patterns before you can install new ones. This means identifying the cues that trigger your current bad habits and either eliminating them or changing your response to them. The second protocol is progressive overload. Just like building muscle, building discipline requires gradually increasing the challenge. You start with behaviors that are almost too easy to fail. Then slowly increase the difficulty as your capacity grows. The third protocol is environmental design. You optimize your physical and social environment to support the behaviors you want and eliminate the triggers for behaviors you don't want. You make the right choices easier and the wrong choices harder. When you combine these protocols with an understanding of how your brain actually works, discipline stops being a struggle and becomes a systematic process of transformation. You stop fighting against your biology and start working with it. You stop relying on willpower and start engineering inevitability. Chapter 3. The Environment Domination Protocol. Your environment is stronger than your willpower. This is not a nice-to-know concept. This is a fundamental law of human behavior that determines whether you succeed or fail at building discipline. Most people underestimate the power of environment because they can't see how it's influencing them. But every single thing in your environment is either supporting your goals or sabotaging them. There is no neutral. Let me prove this to you. Right now, look around where you're sitting. What do you see? If you see your phone, you're more likely to check it. If you see junk food, you're more likely to eat it. If you see an unmade bed, you're more likely to feel disorganized. If you see workout clothes, you're more likely to exercise. Your brain is constantly processing environmental cues and using them to determine appropriate behavior. This happens below conscious awareness. You don't actively decide to be influenced by your environment. It happens automatically through what psychologists call priming. Your brain sees a cue and immediately starts preparing for the associated behavior. See a gym, think about fitness. See a bookshelf, think about reading. See a messy desk, feel scattered and unfocused. The most disciplined people in the world understand this principle and use it ruthlessly. They don't rely on willpower to make good choices. They design their environment so that good choices become automatic and bad choices become difficult or impossible. This is what I call the Environment Domination Protocol, and it operates on 3 levels: elimination, optimization, and installation. Elimination means removing all environmental triggers for behaviors you want to avoid. If you want to stop eating junk food, you remove all junk food from your house, not just hide it in a cabinet. Remove it completely. If you want to stop wasting time on social media, you delete the apps from your phone. If you want to stop watching too much television, you unplug the TV and put it in a closet. Most people resist elimination because they think it's too extreme. They want to rely on willpower to resist temptation. But this is exactly backward. Willpower is a limited resource. Every time you resist temptation, you deplete your capacity for other important decisions. The smartest approach is to eliminate temptation entirely. Think about it this way. If you were trying to quit drinking alcohol, would you keep a fully stocked bar in your house and rely on willpower to avoid it? Of course not. You'd remove all alcohol from your environment. The same principle applies to every behavior you want to change. Optimization means arranging your environment to support the behaviors you want to build. This goes far beyond just organization. This is about strategically placing cues that trigger positive behaviors and removing barriers that make those behaviors difficult. If you want to read more, you put books everywhere and make them the most accessible form of entertainment. If you want to eat healthier, you prep healthy meals and put them at eye level in your refrigerator. If you want to work out consistently, you lay out your workout clothes the night before and keep your equipment visible. The key is making desired behaviors as frictionless as possible while adding friction to undesired behaviors. Every step of additional friction dramatically reduces the likelihood that you'll follow through with a behavior. Every step you remove increases the likelihood exponentially. Installation means adding environmental cues that remind you of your identity and goals. This is about surrounding yourself with visual, auditory, and social reminders of who you're becoming. You put motivational quotes where you'll see them daily. You set up systems that track your progress visibly. You join communities of people who share your values and aspirations. Your environment should tell a story about who you are and who you're becoming. When you walk through your space, you should be reminded constantly of your commitments and your progress. You should feel like the person you want to be, not the person you're trying to change. But here's where most people go wrong with environmental design. They focus only on their physical environment and ignore their digital and social environments. In the modern world, your digital environment might be more powerful than your physical environment. Your phone is with you constantly, feeding your brain a steady stream of information and stimulation. The apps you have installed, the notifications you allow, the content you consume, the people you follow on social media, all of this is programming your brain and influencing your behavior. If you want to build discipline, you need to audit your digital environment with the same intensity as your physical environment. Delete apps that waste your time. Unfollow accounts that make you feel bad about yourself. Install apps that support your goals. Set up systems that remind you of your priorities instead of distracting you from them. Your social environment is equally important. You become like the people you spend time with, because humans are social creatures designed to fit into groups. If your friends are undisciplined, unmotivated, and negative, you'll unconsciously adapt to match their behavior. If your friends are disciplined, ambitious, and positive, you'll rise to meet their standard. This doesn't mean you need to abandon your friends, but it does mean you need to be intentional about who you spend the most time with. You need to actively seek out people who embody the qualities you want to develop. You need to put yourself in environments where your desired behavior is normal and expected. The most advanced practitioners of discipline create what I call total environmental alignment. Every aspect of their environment, from their physical space to their digital habits to their social circle, is optimized to support their goals. They don't leave anything to chance because they understand that environment always wins in the long run. This might seem like overkill, but consider the alternative. The alternative is fighting against your environment every single day. The alternative is relying on willpower to overcome constant temptation and distraction. The alternative is making every day harder than it needs to be. When you align your environment with your goals, discipline becomes effortless. You're not fighting against your surroundings. You're flowing with them. You're not resisting temptation. You're being guided toward better choices. You're not forcing yourself to be disciplined. You're designing a life where discipline is inevitable. Chapter 4. The Identity Shift Strategy. Most people try to change their behavior without changing their identity. And that's why they fail. You cannot sustain actions that conflict with your self-image. Your brain will always move toward consistency with who you believe you are. If you see yourself as an undisciplined person trying to become disciplined, you'll unconsciously sabotage your efforts to maintain that identity. Real change doesn't start with behavior. It starts with identity. You have to become the type of person who naturally does the things you want to do. You have to shift from trying to act disciplined to actually being disciplined. This is the difference between temporary change and permanent transformation. Here's how most people approach change. They set a goal, like losing weight or building a business. They focus on the outcome they want to achieve. They try to force behaviors that will get them to that outcome. And when those behaviors feel unnatural or difficult, they give up and tell themselves they're just not that type of person. The disciplined approach is exactly opposite. You start with identity. You decide who you want to become. You adopt the beliefs and values of that person. You start taking small actions that prove to yourself that you are that type of person. And then larger actions begin to feel natural and automatic. Instead of saying, "I want to lose weight," you say, "I am a healthy person." Instead of, "I want to write a book," you say, "I am a writer." Instead of, "I want to be successful," you say, "I am someone who executes relentlessly." You start with the identity and let the behaviors flow from that foundation. This works because of something called cognitive consistency. Your brain has a powerful drive to align your actions with your beliefs about yourself. When you truly believe you are a disciplined person, disciplined behavior stops feeling like work and starts feeling like expression of who you are. But here's the key. You can't just declare a new identity and expect it to stick. Identity change requires evidence. You have to prove to yourself that you are who you say you are through consistent action. Every small disciplined choice becomes evidence that you are a disciplined person. Every time you follow through on a commitment, you reinforce your new identity. This is why starting small is so crucial. You're not just building habits, you're building identity. If you try to make massive changes immediately, you'll fail and damage your self-image. But if you start with tiny actions that you can do consistently, you'll build a foundation of evidence that supports your new identity. Let's say you want to become someone who exercises consistently. Don't start by trying to work out for 2 hours every day. Start by doing 10 push-ups every morning. Not because 10 push-ups will transform your body, but because doing 10 push-ups every morning proves to yourself that you are someone who exercises consistently. Each time you do those push-ups, you're casting a vote for your new identity. You're telling yourself, "I am the type of person who exercises no matter what." After a few weeks, this identity starts to feel real. And once it feels real, more challenging exercise starts to feel natural because it's consistent with who you are. The same principle applies to any change you want to make. Want to be a reader? Read 1 page every day. Want to be a writer? Write 1 sentence every day. Want to be organized? Make your bed every morning. These tiny actions seem insignificant, but they're actually the most powerful tool for identity transformation. But identity shift isn't just about proving things to yourself. It's also about changing the story you tell yourself about who you are and why you do things. Most people have disempowering stories about their past that keep them stuck. I've never been disciplined. I always start things and don't finish them. I'm just not a morning person. I don't have good genetics. These stories feel like facts, but they're actually choices. You can choose to tell a different story about yourself, and that new story will create new possibilities. The most powerful identity shift happens when you stop identifying with your past failures and start identifying with your future potential. Instead of, I'm someone who struggles with discipline, you say, I'm someone who is developing incredible discipline. Instead of, I always quit, you say, I'm learning to follow through no matter what. This subtle shift in language creates a completely different relationship with failure and setbacks. When you identify with your past, every failure confirms that you're not capable of change. When you identify with your growth, every failure becomes data that helps you improve. But here's what most people miss about identity work. Your identity isn't just what you think about yourself. It's also what you think about the world and how it works. If you believe discipline is supposed to be hard and unpleasant, you'll unconsciously make it hard and unpleasant. If you believe successful people are just different from you, you'll never fully commit to becoming successful yourself. You have to examine and update your beliefs about discipline, success, change, and your own capabilities. You have to adopt the worldview of someone who naturally embodies the qualities you want to develop. This means studying how disciplined people think, not just what they do. Disciplined people see challenges as opportunities to grow stronger. They see setbacks as information, not evidence of inadequacy. They see discipline as freedom, not restriction. They see hard work as privilege, not burden. They see consistency as compound interest, not daily effort. When you adopt these beliefs, discipline stops feeling like punishment and starts feeling like investment. You stop seeing yourself as someone who has to force discipline and start seeing yourself as someone who chooses discipline because you understand its value. The final piece of identity shift is surrounding yourself with people who see you as the person you're becoming, not the person you've been. Other people's expectations have a powerful influence on your behavior. If people expect you to be disciplined, you'll naturally rise to meet those expectations. If people expect you to quit or fail, you'll unconsciously live down to those expectations. This is why it's so important to be intentional about who you share your goals with and how you talk about your changes. Don't announce dramatic transformations that put pressure on you to be perfect. Instead, quietly embody your new identity through consistent action and let people notice the changes naturally. When you combine identity shift with environmental design and neuroplasticity principles, you create an unstoppable foundation for discipline. You're not fighting against who you are. You're expressing who you're becoming. You're not forcing change. You're allowing change to emerge from your new understanding of yourself. Chapter 5. The systematic elimination of resistance. Resistance is not your enemy. Resistance is information. It's your brain's way of telling you that you're trying to do something that conflicts with your current programming. Most people try to power through resistance with willpower. But this is like trying to drive a car with the parking brake on. It's possible, but it's inefficient and unsustainable. The disciplined approach is to systematically eliminate resistance rather than fight it. This means understanding why your brain resists certain behaviors and then addressing those reasons at their source. When you remove the root causes of resistance, discipline becomes effortless because there's nothing left to resist. There are 5 primary sources of resistance that keep people from building discipline: unclear direction, overwhelming magnitude, inadequate systems, conflicting values, and insufficient motivation. Master the elimination of these 5 sources, and you'll wonder why discipline ever seemed difficult. Unclear direction is the most common source of resistance. Your brain resists taking action when it doesn't know exactly what to do or why it matters. Vague goals create vague results because they don't provide clear guidance for behavior. Get in shape doesn't tell your brain what to do. Do 30 minutes of cardio every morning at 6 a.m. gives your brain precise instructions it can follow. But clarity goes deeper than just knowing what to do. You also need to understand why you're doing it and how it fits into your larger life strategy. When you have a compelling reason for your goals, resistance decreases dramatically because your brain stops seeing discipline as arbitrary suffering and starts seeing it as purposeful investment. This is why connecting your daily actions to your long-term vision is so powerful. Every workout becomes a step toward the person you want to become. Every hour of focused work becomes progress toward the life you want to build. Every disciplined choice becomes an expression of your deepest values and commitments. Overwhelming magnitude is the second major source of resistance. Your brain resists goals that seem too big or too difficult because it's designed to conserve energy and avoid failure. When you try to make massive changes immediately, you trigger your brain's threat detection system and create internal resistance. The solution is to make your goals so small that they feel almost ridiculous not to do them. Instead of trying to read for 2 hours every day, commit to reading 1 page. Instead of working out for 90 minutes, commit to putting on your workout clothes. Instead of writing 1,000 words, commit to writing 1 sentence. This isn't about setting low standards. This is about understanding how behavior change actually works. Small actions build momentum, confidence, and neural pathways. Once you establish consistency with small actions, you can gradually increase the challenge without triggering resistance. The key is making your minimum viable action so small that you can do it even on your worst days. On good days, you'll naturally do more because you're already in motion. On bad days, you'll still maintain consistency and preserve your momentum. This approach eliminates the all-or-nothing thinking that destroys most people's discipline. Inadequate systems is the third source of resistance. Your brain resists behaviors that require constant decision-making and problem-solving. Every time you have to figure out what to do, when to do it, or how to do it, you create friction that leads to procrastination and avoidance. The solution is to systematize every aspect of your disciplined behaviors. Create detailed plans that eliminate decision fatigue. Prepare everything in advance so execution becomes automatic. Build routines that chain productive behaviors together so one action naturally leads to the next. For example, don't just decide to work out regularly. Create a complete workout system. Specific exercises, exact timing, prepared equipment, planned music, predetermined rewards. Remove every possible source of friction so that working out becomes as automatic as brushing your teeth. Conflicting values is the fourth source of resistance, and it's often the most subtle. Your brain resists behaviors that conflict with your deeper beliefs about yourself, others, or how the world works. If you secretly believe that successful people are selfish, or that discipline requires giving up fun, you'll unconsciously sabotage your efforts to preserve your identity and values. This is why examining your underlying beliefs about discipline is so crucial. You might discover that you associate discipline with rigidity, deprivation, or judgment of others. You might believe that spontaneous people are more creative, or that structured people are boring. These beliefs will create resistance no matter how good your systems are. The solution is to reframe discipline in a way that aligns with your values. Show yourself how discipline actually creates more freedom, not less. Understand how structure enables creativity rather than restricting it. See discipline as self-care, not self-punishment. When discipline serves your values instead of conflicting with them, resistance disappears. Insufficient motivation is the fifth source of resistance. Your brain resists behaviors that don't provide adequate reward relative to the effort required. If the benefits of discipline feel abstract or distant while the costs feel immediate and concrete, you'll struggle with consistency no matter how good your intentions are. The solution is to engineer immediate rewards for disciplined behavior while making the costs of undisciplined behavior more visible and immediate. This might mean celebrating small wins, tracking progress visibly, or creating accountability systems that provide social feedback. But the most powerful form of motivation is intrinsic. When you connect your disciplined behaviors to your sense of identity, competence, and autonomy, they become self-reinforcing. You don't do them for external rewards. You do them because they express who you are and help you grow into who you want to become. Advanced resistance elimination involves what I call the friction audit. You systematically examine every aspect of your desired behavior and identify potential sources of friction. Then you eliminate or minimize each source of friction until the behavior becomes as easy as possible. If you want to eat healthier, you audit everything from grocery shopping to meal planning to cooking to cleanup. You remove every possible barrier and create systems that make healthy eating the path of least resistance. You prep meals in advance, organize your kitchen efficiently, and eliminate junk food from your environment. If you want to write consistently, you audit your writing environment, your tools, your process, and your mental state. You eliminate distractions, optimize your workspace, develop templates and frameworks, and create rituals that put you in the right mindset immediately. The goal is to make disciplined behavior feel inevitable rather than effortful. When you systematically eliminate resistance, you don't have to rely on willpower because there's nothing left to resist. The right actions become the natural actions because you've removed all the barriers that were making them difficult. Remember, resistance is not a character flaw. It's a design problem. Instead of trying to overcome resistance through force, solve the problems that create resistance. Instead of fighting your brain, work with it. Instead of making discipline harder, make it easier. When you approach resistance as information rather than opposition, It becomes a valuable guide for building sustainable discipline. Chapter 6. The Momentum Manufacturing System. Momentum is the most powerful force in human behavior. Yet most people completely misunderstand how to create it. They think momentum comes from big wins or perfect days, but that's exactly backward. Real momentum comes from protecting and building on small consistencies, especially when you don't feel like it. Here's what most people do wrong. They start strong with massive effort, burn out within days or weeks, then quit completely. They go from 0 to hero attempts that inevitably crash and burn. Then they tell themselves they lack discipline, when really they just lack understanding of how momentum actually works. Momentum is not about intensity. Momentum is about frequency. It's not about doing something perfectly. It's about doing something consistently. A person who exercises for 10 minutes every single day for a year will be in better shape than someone who exercises intensely twice a week for 2 months, then quits. This is because momentum operates on compound interest principles. Small actions performed consistently create exponential results over time. But the compound effect only works if you never break the chain. One missed day resets your psychological momentum. Even if it doesn't eliminate your physical progress, your brain tracks consistency patterns and uses them to predict future behavior. When you maintain consistency, your brain expects continuation and makes the behavior feel more natural. When you break consistency, your brain expects discontinuation and makes restart feel more difficult. This is why the most disciplined people are absolutely fanatical about maintaining streaks. They understand that a 300-day meditation streak has psychological power that goes far beyond the cumulative benefit of 300 individual meditation sessions. The streak itself becomes a source of identity and momentum. But here's the key insight that most people miss. You don't build momentum through big actions. You build it through minimum viable actions on difficult days. The day you don't feel like exercising but do 10 push-ups anyway is worth more for momentum than the day you feel great and work out for 2 hours. This is because momentum is built in the moments of resistance, not the moments of inspiration. When you take action despite not feeling like it, you prove to yourself that you can be disciplined regardless of circumstances. You build what I call resistance immunity, the ability to act independently of your emotional state. The momentum manufacturing system operates on 3 core principles: minimum viable consistency, momentum preservation protocols, and strategic momentum multiplication. Minimum viable consistency means identifying the smallest possible version of your desired behavior that you can maintain even on your worst days. This becomes your non-negotiable baseline. You can always do more, but you never do less than your minimum viable action. If your goal is to write a book, your minimum viable action might be writing 1 sentence. If your goal is to build a business, it might be making 1 sales call. If your goal is to get in shape, it might be doing 1 push-up. These actions seem trivial, but they preserve the psychological pattern of consistency that momentum requires. Momentum preservation protocols are systems you use to maintain streaks when life gets difficult. You plan in advance for obstacles, setbacks, and challenging days. You create backup plans, simplified versions, and emergency protocols that allow you to maintain consistency even when normal execution isn't possible. For example, If you normally work out at the gym for an hour, your momentum preservation protocol might be doing bodyweight exercises at home if you can't get to the gym. If you normally write for 2 hours, your protocol might be writing for 10 minutes on your phone if you're traveling. The key is having predetermined responses to predictable obstacles. When you face resistance or unexpected challenges, you don't have to make decisions or rely on willpower. You simply execute your momentum preservation protocol and maintain your streak. Strategic momentum multiplication is about using existing momentum to build new habits and behaviors. Once you have solid momentum in one area, you can leverage that psychological confidence to tackle bigger challenges or additional habit areas. This works because momentum creates a positive identity feedback loop. When you see yourself as someone who follows through consistently in one area, you start to expect the same consistency from yourself in other areas. The discipline you build exercising transfers to discipline with nutrition, work, relationships, and personal development. But you have to be strategic about momentum multiplication. Most people get excited by early success and try to change everything at once. This dilutes their focus and breaks their momentum. The smart approach is to fully establish one habit before adding another, using the confidence from the first to fuel the second. The most advanced practitioners of momentum understand that momentum has emotional and social dimensions beyond just personal consistency. They create external momentum through accountability systems, public commitments, and community involvement. When other people know about your commitments and track your progress, you create social momentum that reinforces your personal momentum. When you miss a day, you're not just breaking your own streak, you're potentially disappointing people who believe in you. This external accountability can provide the extra motivation needed to maintain consistency through difficult periods. But the most powerful form of momentum is what I call identity momentum. This is when your consistent actions start to reshape how you see yourself at a fundamental level. You stop being someone who is trying to be disciplined and become someone who simply is disciplined. The behavior becomes an expression of who you are, rather than something you have to force yourself to do. Identity momentum is self-reinforcing because it operates through cognitive consistency. Once you truly see yourself as a disciplined person, undisciplined behavior feels wrong and unnatural. You maintain consistency not because you have to, but because inconsistency conflicts with your identity. Remember, momentum is your most valuable asset in building discipline. Protect it at all costs. Build it systematically through minimum viable actions. Preserve it through predetermined protocols. Multiply it strategically once it's established. And never underestimate the power of maintaining streaks, especially through resistance. The person who does something small every single day will always outperform the person who does something big occasionally. Consistency beats intensity every time when it comes to long-term discipline and results. Chapter 7. The Bulletproof Failure Recovery System. Failure is not the opposite of discipline. Failure is part of discipline. The most disciplined people in the world are not people who never fail. They are people who have mastered the art of recovering from failure faster and more completely than everyone else. Here's the brutal truth that no one talks about. You will fail. You will miss days. You will break commitments to yourself. You will have moments where your discipline completely breaks down. This is not a character flaw. It's a mathematical certainty. The question is not whether you'll fail. It's how quickly and effectively you'll recover when you do. Most people have an all-or-nothing relationship with discipline. They think one missed workout means they're not athletes. One day of poor eating means their diet is ruined. One procrastinated task means they lack work ethic. This perfectionist mindset is the enemy of real discipline because it turns minor setbacks into major spirals. The disciplined approach is completely different. Disciplined people expect failure as part of the process. They plan for setbacks. They have predetermined protocols for getting back on track. They treat failure as data, not evidence of inadequacy. This mindset shift changes everything because it removes the shame and self-judgment that typically follow failure. When you expect occasional setbacks, you don't waste mental energy beating yourself up when they happen. You simply execute your recovery protocol and get back to work. The Bulletproof Failure Recovery System operates on 4 core principles: rapid recognition, immediate action, pattern analysis, and system improvement. Rapid recognition means developing the awareness to catch failures and setbacks as quickly as possible. The longer you stay in a failure state, the harder it becomes to recover. The key is creating triggers that alert you when you're starting to slip, so you can intervene before a small problem becomes a big problem. This might mean daily check-ins with yourself about your commitments. It might mean tracking leading indicators that predict larger failures. It might mean having other people who can point out when you're getting off track. The goal is to compress the time between failure and awareness so you can respond immediately. Immediate action means having predetermined responses to different types of failures that you can execute without thinking. When you fail, your brain is often in a compromised state. You're dealing with disappointment, shame, or discouragement. This is not the time to figure out what to do next. This is the time to execute a plan you made when you were thinking clearly. Your immediate action protocol might be as simple as doing your minimum viable action within the next hour. If you missed your morning workout, you do 10 push-ups immediately. If you ate junk food, you drink a large glass of water and eat something healthy. If you wasted time on social media, you immediately switch to a productive task. The goal is not to undo the failure. It's to re-establish the pattern as quickly as possible. You're proving to yourself that one mistake doesn't define you and that you can get back on track immediately. This breaks the psychological spiral that turns minor setbacks into major disasters. Pattern analysis means examining your failures to understand their root causes and predictable triggers. Most people repeat the same failure patterns over and over because they treat each failure as an isolated incident instead of gathering intelligence about their weak points. Disciplined people maintain failure logs. They track what was happening when they failed. What time of day was it? What was their emotional state? What environmental factors were present? What decisions led up to the failure? This data reveals patterns that allow you to predict and prevent future failures. For example, you might discover that you always break your diet when you're stressed at work and don't have healthy food prepared, or that you always skip workouts when you go to bed too late the night before. Once you identify these patterns, you can create specific interventions that address the root causes. System improvement means using failure data to strengthen your discipline systems. Every failure reveals a weakness in your current approach that you can fix. Instead of seeing failure as evidence that you lack willpower, you see it as information about how to build better systems. Maybe you need better meal prep protocols to handle stressful days. Maybe you need an earlier bedtime routine to support morning workouts. Maybe you need better environmental design to reduce temptation. Each failure becomes an opportunity to evolve your systems and make future discipline easier. But here's the most important part of failure recovery. You have to separate your behavior from your identity. One day of poor choices does not make you an undisciplined person. A week of setbacks does not mean you're not capable of change. A month of struggle does not prove that discipline isn't for you. Your identity is based on your overall pattern, not your worst moments. A disciplined person is not someone who never fails. It's someone who fails and gets back up consistently. It's someone who maintains an overall upward trajectory, despite temporary setbacks. This is why tracking your overall consistency percentage is so powerful. If you hit your discipline goals 80% of the time, you're extremely disciplined. If you maintain your habits 6 days out of 7 each week, you're in the top percentile of human performance. Don't let perfectionistic thinking blind you to your actual success rate. The most advanced failure recovery technique is what I call failure preemption. This is when you recognize the early warning signs of potential failure and take corrective action before you actually fail. You notice that you're starting to feel unmotivated, so you reduce your goals temporarily rather than miss days completely. You sense that stress is building, so you implement your stress management protocols before they undermine your discipline. Failure preemption requires deep self-awareness and honest self-assessment. You have to know your failure patterns well enough to see them coming. You have to be willing to adjust your approach based on changing circumstances rather than rigidly sticking to plans that aren't working. Remember, failure is not the enemy of discipline. It's the teacher. Every failure contains valuable information about how to improve your systems and strengthen your approach. The goal is not to avoid failure completely. It's to fail better, to fail less frequently, recover more quickly, and learn more effectively from each setback. The person who never fails is not the most disciplined person. The most disciplined person is the one who fails, learns, adjusts, and keeps going until they succeed. Master the art of failure recovery, and you'll never stay down for long. Chapter 8. The Advanced Habit Architecture Blueprint. Most people think building habits is about repetition. Do something for 21 days, and it becomes automatic. This is completely wrong, and it's why most people fail at habit formation. Real habit architecture is about understanding the complex psychological and environmental factors that make behaviors stick, then engineering those factors systematically. A habit is not just a repeated behavior. A habit is a neurological pattern consisting of a cue, a routine, and a reward, all connected by what neuroscientists call a habit loop. But most people focus only on the routine and ignore the cue and reward systems that actually drive the behavior. This is like trying to build a house by only constructing the walls. Without a proper foundation and roof, the structure collapses. Without properly designed cue and reward systems, habits collapse as soon as you face stress, distraction, or competing priorities. Advanced habit architecture operates on 5 levels: environmental cues, behavioral chains, reward optimization, context variation, and systematic scaling. Environmental cues are the triggers that initiate your habit loops. Most people rely on time-based cues like, "I'll work out at 6 a.m." or "I'll read before bed." But time-based cues are weak because they depend on your memory and motivation. The most powerful cues are environmental objects or situations that automatically trigger the desire to perform the habit. Instead of relying on remembering to work out, you put your workout clothes next to your bed so you see them immediately when you wake up. Instead of trying to remember to read, you put a book on your pillow so you have to move it before going to sleep. The environmental cue does the remembering for you. But here's the advanced technique. You want to create cue chains, not just single cues. One environmental trigger leads to another, which leads to another, creating an unstoppable momentum toward your desired behavior. Your workout clothes trigger putting them on, which triggers going to your exercise area, which triggers starting your warm-up routine. Behavioral chains are sequences of connected actions that flow naturally from one to the next. Instead of building isolated habits, you build habit sequences that feel like single, continuous actions. This is infinitely more powerful than individual habits, because each step in the sequence reinforces the others. For example, instead of just having a morning workout habit, you create a morning sequence. Wake up, put on workout clothes, drink water, do mobility exercises, complete workout, shower, eat breakfast. Each action serves as the cue for the next action, creating an unbreakable chain. The key to behavioral chaining is starting with existing habits and attaching new behaviors to them. You don't try to create entirely new routines. You extend routines you already have automatically. After you brush your teeth, you do squats. After you pour your morning coffee, you review your daily priorities. After you sit down at your desk, you write for 10 minutes. Reward optimization is about engineering immediate, intrinsic rewards for your habits, rather than relying on distant, external outcomes. Your brain learns to crave behaviors that provide immediate pleasure or satisfaction. If your habits only provide long-term benefits, they'll always feel like work rather than natural expressions of who you are. The most powerful rewards are neurochemical. They trigger the release of dopamine, serotonin, or other feel-good chemicals that make you want to repeat the behavior. This might be the endorphin rush from exercise, the satisfaction of checking off a completed task, or the sense of progress from tracking improvement. But you can also engineer artificial rewards that become psychologically meaningful. Maybe you only listen to your favorite podcast while exercising. Maybe you only drink your special coffee after completing your most important work task. Maybe you only watch certain shows while doing household chores. The key is pairing activities you need to do with experiences you want to have. This creates positive associations that make discipline feel rewarding rather than punishing. You start looking forward to your habits instead of dreading them. Context variation is about building habits that are robust across different situations and environments. Most people build habits that only work under perfect conditions. When their routine gets disrupted, their habits collapse because they haven't trained for variability. Advanced habit builders practice their habits in multiple contexts. They work out at home and at the gym. They meditate in their bedroom and during travel. They maintain their nutrition habits at restaurants and at family gatherings. This context variation makes habits anti-fragile. They actually get stronger when exposed to stress and change. This doesn't mean making habits more complicated. It means having simplified versions that work in any situation. Your full workout routine might require a gym, but your travel version only needs bodyweight exercises. Your regular reading habit might require quiet space. but your mobile version works with audiobooks during commutes. Systematic scaling is about gradually increasing the challenge and complexity of your habits as your capacity grows. Most people either start too small and never progress, or start too big and burn out immediately. The disciplined approach is progressive overload, constantly pushing just beyond your current comfort zone. This means regularly auditing your habits and asking, is this still challenging me? Am I still growing from this behavior? Can I handle a slightly more demanding version? You might start with 10 minutes of daily reading and gradually increase to 30 minutes. You might begin with basic exercises and progress to more complex movement patterns. But scaling isn't just about increasing duration or intensity. It's also about adding sophistication to your habit systems. You start with basic tracking and evolve to detailed analytics. You begin with simple routines and develop complex behavioral chains. You move from external accountability to intrinsic motivation. The most advanced practitioners of habit architecture understand that habits are not destinations, they're vehicles. The goal is not to build perfect habits. It's to build habits that serve your larger vision and adapt as your vision evolves. This means regularly evaluating whether your current habits are still aligned with your goals and identity. Some habits that served you at one stage of development might hold you back at another stage. Some behaviors that were challenging when you started might become effortless and need to be replaced with more demanding alternatives. Advanced habit architecture is ultimately about building discipline infrastructure that becomes stronger and more sophisticated over time. You're not just creating individual behaviors, you're creating systems of behaviors that reinforce each other and evolve together. When you master these principles, building new habits becomes systematic rather than hopeful. You understand exactly how to engineer behaviors that stick. You can predict which approaches will work and which will fail. You can design habit systems that work regardless of your emotional state or external circumstances. Remember, habits are the compound interest of self-improvement. Small behaviors performed consistently create exponential results over time, but only if they're properly architected to survive the inevitable challenges and changes that life presents. Chapter 9. The Energy Management Matrix. Discipline without energy management is like trying to drive a car without fuel. You might have the best systems, the clearest goals, and the strongest motivation, but without properly managing your physical, mental, and emotional energy, you'll constantly struggle with execution and consistency. Most people approach discipline as if energy is unlimited. They make ambitious plans based on how they feel during peak motivation, then wonder why they can't sustain those behaviors when their energy is depleted. This is backwards. Real discipline is designed around energy optimization, not energy depletion. Your energy operates on multiple levels: physical energy from nutrition, sleep, and movement; mental energy from cognitive load and decision-making; emotional energy from stress, relationships, and internal conflicts; and spiritual energy from purpose, meaning, and alignment with values. These energy systems are interconnected. When one system is depleted, it affects all the others. When you're physically exhausted, your mental focus suffers. When you're emotionally drained, your physical energy drops. When you lack purpose, everything feels more difficult than it should. The Energy Management Matrix is a framework for optimizing all four energy systems to create sustainable discipline. Instead of forcing yourself to be disciplined despite low energy, you create discipline by systematically maintaining high energy. Physical energy optimization starts with sleep. which is the foundation of everything else. Most people treat sleep as optional or try to get by on minimum rest. This is like trying to perform surgery with dull instruments. Your cognitive function, emotional regulation, and physical performance all depend on adequate sleep recovery. The disciplined approach to sleep is treating it as seriously as any other important commitment. You have a consistent sleep schedule, an optimized sleep environment, and evening routines that prepare your body for quality rest. You prioritize sleep over entertainment, social activities, or additional work because you understand that sacrificing sleep makes everything else less effective. But sleep is just the foundation. You also need to optimize nutrition for sustained energy rather than quick fixes. This means eating for stable blood sugar, adequate protein, and consistent meal timing. You avoid energy crashes from processed foods, sugar spikes, and irregular eating patterns. Most people eat reactively based on convenience, cravings, or social situations. Disciplined people eat strategically based on energy requirements, performance goals, and long-term health. They plan their nutrition around their disciplined demands, not around their immediate preferences. Movement and exercise create energy rather than depleting it, but only when done appropriately. The right type and amount of physical activity enhances your capacity for mental focus and emotional resilience. The wrong type or amount creates additional stress that undermines other discipline efforts. This means matching your exercise approach to your current energy demands and recovery capacity. During periods of high stress or demanding projects, you might reduce exercise intensity to preserve energy for other priorities. During periods of lower stress, you might increase physical challenges to build greater overall capacity. Mental energy optimization is about managing cognitive load and decision fatigue. Your brain has limited processing capacity, and every decision depletes that capacity. By the end of a day filled with decisions, your ability to make disciplined choices is severely compromised. The solution is automating as many decisions as possible through systems, routines, and predetermined choices. You don't decide what to wear each morning. You have a standard wardrobe. You don't decide what to eat for breakfast. You have a regular meal rotation. You don't decide when to work on important projects. You have scheduled time blocks. This preserves mental energy for the decisions that actually matter. Strategic choices about goals, relationships, and opportunities. You use your cognitive capacity for high-value thinking rather than consuming it on routine decisions. But mental energy management also requires understanding your natural cognitive rhythms. Most people have predictable patterns of mental clarity and focus throughout the day. Some people think most clearly in the morning, others in the afternoon or evening. Disciplined people align their most demanding mental tasks with their natural peak energy periods. They schedule creative work, important decisions, and challenging learning during their optimal mental states. They save routine tasks, administrative work, and low-stakes activities for periods when their cognitive capacity is lower. Emotional energy optimization is about managing stress, relationships, and internal psychological states. Negative emotions are not just uncomfortable. They're energy drains that make discipline more difficult. Chronic stress, unresolved conflicts, and internal resistance all consume resources that could be used for productive action. This means developing emotional regulation skills that allow you to maintain stability regardless of external circumstances. You need techniques for managing anxiety, processing frustration, and recovering from setbacks without losing emotional equilibrium. It also means being strategic about social interactions and relationship dynamics. Some people energize you, and some people drain you. Some conversations inspire action, and some conversations create doubt. Some environments support your goals, and some environments undermine them. Disciplined people are intentional about their social energy investments. They spend more time with people who support their growth, and less time with people who drain their motivation. They seek out conversations that energize their vision and avoid discussions that create internal conflict about their choices. Spiritual energy optimization is about connecting your daily actions to deeper purpose and meaning. When your discipline serves something larger than immediate gratification, it becomes sustainable because it's fueled by intrinsic motivation rather than external pressure. This doesn't necessarily mean religious spirituality, though it can. It means understanding why your goals matter beyond just achieving them. It means connecting your habits to your values, your vision to your identity, and your actions to your legacy. When discipline feels meaningless or arbitrary, it requires willpower to sustain. When discipline feels purposeful and aligned, it becomes self-reinforcing because every action confirms your commitment to what matters most. The most advanced practitioners of energy management understand that optimization is not about maximizing output. It's about creating sustainable systems that can operate consistently over long periods. They would rather maintain 70% effort for years than give 100% effort for weeks. This requires honest assessment of your current energy capacity and building discipline systems that work within those constraints. As your capacity grows through proper energy management, your discipline systems can become more demanding. But the foundation must always be sustainable energy rather than unsustainable force. Remember, energy is not unlimited, but it is renewable. The goal is not to exhaust yourself in pursuit of discipline. It's to create discipline systems that actually increase your energy over time. When discipline enhances your energy rather than depleting it, consistency becomes effortless and growth becomes inevitable. Chapter 10. The Social Force Multiplication System. You are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. This is not just a nice quote. It's a fundamental principle of human psychology that determines whether your discipline succeeds or fails. Your social environment shapes your beliefs, behaviors, and standards more powerfully than your individual willpower ever could. Most people underestimate the impact of social influence because it operates subtly and gradually. You don't consciously decide to adopt other people's habits and attitudes. It happens automatically through what psychologists call social proof and conformity pressure. Your brain is constantly calibrating what's normal and acceptable based on the people around you. If you're surrounded by people who make excuses, you'll unconsciously start making excuses. If you're surrounded by people who complain about challenges, you'll find yourself complaining more. If you're surrounded by people who give up easily, giving up will start to feel normal and justified. But the opposite is equally true. If you're surrounded by people who execute consistently, execution becomes your standard. If you're surrounded by people who embrace challenges, challenges become opportunities. If you're surrounded by people who never give up, quitting becomes unthinkable. This is why changing your social environment is one of the most powerful discipline interventions you can make. You don't have to rely on your individual strength when your entire social system supports your goals. You don't have to fight against negative influences when everyone around you reinforces positive behaviors. The social force multiplication system operates on 4 levels: social auditing, strategic association, accountability architecture, and influence expansion. Social auditing means honestly assessing the impact that different people in your life have on your discipline and motivation. Some people energize your ambitions, and some people drain your drive. Some people challenge you to grow, and some people enable your excuses. Some people celebrate your progress, and some people undermine your confidence. You need to identify which relationships support your discipline and which relationships sabotage it. This doesn't mean judging people as good or bad. It means understanding which interactions move you toward your goals and which move you away from them. Create 3 categories: energy givers who inspire and motivate you, energy takers who drain and discourage you, and energy neutral people who have minimal impact either way. The goal is spending more time with energy givers, less time with energy takers, and being neutral about energy neutral relationships. This might feel selfish or calculating, but it's actually responsible. When you improve your own discipline and achievement, you become a better friend, partner, family member, and contributor to society. When you allow your discipline to be undermined by negative influences, you serve no one well. Strategic association means actively seeking out people who embody the qualities you want to develop. Instead of hoping to find disciplined people accidentally, you deliberately put yourself in environments where such people gather. This might mean joining fitness communities if you want to improve your health, attending entrepreneurship meetups if you want to build a business, or participating in educational programs if you want to develop new skills. You're not just learning information, you're absorbing the culture and standards of people who have already achieved what you're working toward. But strategic association goes deeper than just finding relevant communities. You want to identify specific individuals who can serve as mentors, accountability partners, and peer supporters. These relationships provide different types of influence that support discipline in different ways. Mentors are people who have achieved results you want and can guide you through the process. They provide perspective, prevent common mistakes, and model what's possible. Accountability partners are peers who share similar goals and help maintain consistency through mutual support and regular check-ins. Peer supporters are people at similar levels who understand your challenges and celebrate your progress. Accountability architecture is about creating systematic social pressure that makes consistency more likely and inconsistency more uncomfortable. This goes beyond just telling people about your goals. It's about designing social systems that provide regular feedback and consequences for your discipline choices. This might mean joining or creating a group where everyone reports weekly progress on their commitments. It might mean having a workout partner who depends on you showing up. It might mean hiring a coach who tracks your performance and charges extra fees for missed sessions. The key is making your discipline visible to others in ways that create positive peer pressure. When other people know about your commitments and expect you to follow through, you're more likely to maintain consistency even when motivation is low. But accountability architecture must be designed carefully. Too much pressure creates stress and rebellion. Too little pressure provides insufficient motivation. The goal is creating social expectations that feel supportive rather than judgmental, challenging rather than overwhelming. Influence expansion is about becoming the type of person who positively influences others' discipline and motivation. When you consistently model disciplined behavior, you attract other disciplined people and inspire less disciplined people to raise their standards. This creates a virtuous cycle where your social environment becomes increasingly supportive of your goals. Instead of constantly fighting against negative influences, you become a positive influence that shapes your social environment. But influence expansion requires authentic modeling rather than preaching or pressure. People are influenced more by what they observe than what they're told. When others see you consistently following through on commitments, handling challenges gracefully, and maintaining long-term focus, they naturally begin to expect more from themselves. This doesn't mean being perfect or never struggling. It means being transparent about your discipline systems, honest about your challenges, and consistent in your efforts. You become living proof that sustained discipline is possible and worthwhile. The most advanced social force multiplication involves what I call network design. This is when you systematically build relationships and environments that create multiple layers of support for your disciplined goals. You might have workout partners for fitness accountability, business mentors for professional growth, learning groups for intellectual development, and spiritual communities for values alignment. Each network reinforces different aspects of your discipline while providing backup support when other systems are stressed. Network design also means understanding that different types of goals require different types of social support. Creative goals might benefit from artistic communities that value experimentation and risk-taking. Business goals might benefit from entrepreneur networks that value execution and results. Health goals might benefit from fitness communities that value consistency and progress. Remember, discipline is not a solo sport. The most successful people throughout history have surrounded themselves with others who shared their commitment to excellence. They understood that individual willpower is limited, but collective standards and mutual support can sustain extraordinary achievement over long periods. Your social environment is either your greatest asset or your greatest liability in building discipline. Choose carefully, design strategically, and invest consistently in relationships that elevate your standards and support your growth. When your social system aligns with your discipline goals, success becomes inevitable because everyone around you expects nothing less. Chapter 11. The Mental Dominance Framework. Your mind is either your greatest weapon or your greatest enemy in the pursuit of discipline. Most people are at war with their own thoughts, fighting against doubt, resistance, and negative self-talk every single day. This internal conflict drains massive amounts of energy that could be used for productive action. Disciplined people don't have different minds. They have different relationships with their minds. They understand that thoughts are not facts, emotions are not commands, and internal resistance is not evidence that they should quit. They've developed what I call mental dominance, the ability to direct their mental resources toward their goals, regardless of what their brain is suggesting moment to moment. Mental dominance is not about positive thinking or suppressing negative thoughts. Those approaches are superficial and unsustainable. Real mental dominance is about understanding how your mind works and using psychological principles to maintain focus and motivation even when your brain is working against you. Your brain has two primary operating systems: the conscious mind, which handles logical thinking and decision-making, and the subconscious mind, which handles automatic responses and emotional reactions. Most people try to use conscious willpower to override subconscious programming. But this is exhausting and temporary. The advanced approach is programming your subconscious mind to support your conscious goals. This means using techniques like visualization, affirmation, and mental rehearsal to create automatic thought patterns that reinforce discipline rather than undermining it. But mental dominance goes deeper than just programming techniques. It requires understanding the specific mental traps that destroy discipline and developing systematic responses to each trap. The first mental trap is catastrophic thinking. This is when your brain takes small setbacks and turns them into evidence of total failure. You miss one workout, and suddenly you're convinced you'll never be fit. You have one unproductive day and you decide you're lazy. You make one mistake and you conclude you're not capable of success. The disciplined response to catastrophic thinking is perspective correction. You immediately challenge the catastrophic narrative with objective evidence. You remind yourself of your overall progress pattern, not just your worst moments. You reframe setbacks as normal parts of any improvement process, rather than evidence of fundamental inadequacy. The second mental trap is perfectionist paralysis. This is when your brain convinces you that if you can't do something perfectly, you shouldn't do it at all. You don't start the project because you don't have enough time to finish it completely. You don't exercise because you can't do your full routine. You don't eat healthy because you can't follow a perfect diet. The disciplined response is embracing good enough. You understand that imperfect action beats perfect inaction every time. You do what you can with the time and resources you have, rather than waiting for ideal conditions that may never come. You measure progress, not perfection. The third mental trap is comparison poisoning. This is when your brain focuses on other people's highlight reels and uses them to diminish your own progress. You see someone else's success and immediately feel inadequate about your own journey. You compare your behind-the-scenes struggles with other people's polished presentations. The disciplined response is radical self-focus. You understand that other people's success has nothing to do with your potential. You measure yourself against your previous self, not against anyone else. You use other people's achievements as inspiration for what's possible, not as evidence of your inadequacy. The fourth mental trap is instant gratification obsession. This is when your brain constantly seeks immediate rewards and becomes frustrated with the delayed gratification that discipline requires. You want to see results immediately and lose motivation when progress feels slow. The disciplined response is process obsession. You fall in love with the daily actions rather than fixating on distant outcomes. You find satisfaction in consistency itself, rather than waiting for external validation. You understand that the compound effect requires patience and that early progress is often invisible. The fifth mental trap is victim mentality. This is when your brain looks for external reasons why discipline is impossible or unfair. You focus on your disadvantages, obstacles, and challenging circumstances rather than on what you can control and influence. The disciplined response is radical responsibility. You understand that while you can't control everything that happens to you, you can control how you respond to everything that happens to you. You focus exclusively on your actions and choices rather than wasting energy complaining about circumstances. Advanced mental dominance requires developing what I call cognitive flexibility. This is the ability to shift your thinking patterns based on what serves your goals, rather than being trapped in automatic mental responses. When you notice catastrophic thinking, you immediately shift to evidence-based thinking. When you catch yourself in perfectionist paralysis, you shift to progress-focused thinking. When comparison poisoning arises, you shift to self-focused thinking. You become the director of your mental experience rather than a passive victim of whatever thoughts happen to arise. This requires constant mental monitoring and intervention. You develop awareness of your thought patterns and the ability to catch destructive thinking before it undermines your discipline. You create mental triggers that automatically redirect your focus when you notice unhelpful thinking. But the most powerful aspect of mental dominance is what I call identity-based thinking. This is when you train your mind to think like the person you're becoming rather than the person you've been. Instead of asking, "What would someone like me do?" you ask, "What would the most disciplined version of myself do?" This subtle shift changes everything because it connects your thinking to your aspirational identity rather than your historical identity. You stop being limited by past patterns and start being guided by future potential. Identity-based thinking also means adopting the mental models and frameworks that highly disciplined people use. You start thinking in terms of systems rather than goals, process rather than outcomes, progress rather than perfection, and growth rather than fixed ability. The most advanced practitioners of mental dominance understand that the goal is not to eliminate all negative thoughts or challenging emotions. The goal is to maintain productive action regardless of what your mind is doing. You develop what I call mental independence, the ability to act according to your commitments, even when your thoughts and feelings are suggesting different actions. This means you can feel unmotivated and still take disciplined action. You can have doubts about your goals and still move toward them consistently. You can experience setbacks and still maintain confidence in your long-term trajectory. Your actions become independent of your mental state. Mental independence is the ultimate expression of discipline because it means you're no longer held hostage by the natural fluctuations of human psychology. You understand that motivation comes and goes, confidence rises and falls, and enthusiasm waxes and wanes. But disciplined action can remain constant through all these changes. Remember, your mind is a tool, not your master. You don't have to believe every thought you think or obey every emotion you feel. You can observe your mental activity with curiosity rather than being controlled by it. You can direct your mental resources toward what matters most rather than being distracted by whatever feels most urgent. When you develop true mental dominance, discipline stops being about fighting yourself and becomes about directing yourself. You stop being at war with your mind and start using your mind as the powerful tool it was designed to be. Chapter 12: The Priority Domination Protocol. Time management is a myth. You cannot manage time because time is fixed. Everyone gets exactly 24 hours every day, no matter how successful or disciplined they are. What separates disciplined people from undisciplined people is not how they manage time, but how they prioritize activities within the time they have. This is why most productivity advice fails. It focuses on efficiency rather than effectiveness. It teaches you how to do things faster rather than how to identify which things actually matter. But doing the wrong things efficiently is still doing the wrong things. Disciplined people understand that success is not about doing more things. It's about doing the right things consistently. They don't try to be productive with everything. They try to be ruthlessly selective about what deserves their attention in the first place. The Priority Domination Protocol is a systematic approach to identifying your highest leverage activities and protecting them from the constant invasion of urgent but unimportant tasks. It operates on 3 levels: strategic clarity, tactical filtering, and protective systems. Strategic clarity means understanding the difference between goals and priorities. Goals are outcomes you want to achieve. Priorities are the small number of activities that will create the biggest impact toward those outcomes. Most people have clear goals, but unclear priorities, which leads to scattered effort and disappointing results. The disciplined approach is identifying the 2 or 3 activities that, if done consistently, would make everything else easier or unnecessary. These are your core priority activities, and they deserve the majority of your time, energy, and attention. For someone building a business, core priority activities might be product development, customer acquisition, and revenue optimization. Everything else is secondary. For someone improving their health, core priority activities might be consistent exercise, nutritious eating, and adequate sleep. Everything else is enhancement, not foundation. The key is being brutally honest about what actually drives results versus what just feels productive. Most people spend enormous amounts of time on activities that have minimal impact on their goals because those activities feel easier or more immediately rewarding than the activities that actually matter. Core priority activities are usually challenging, sometimes uncomfortable, and rarely provide immediate gratification. They require deep focus, sustained effort, and delayed reward. This is exactly why most people avoid them and why they're so powerful for those who embrace them. Tactical filtering means developing systematic criteria for evaluating opportunities, requests, and distractions that compete for your attention. Instead of making decisions reactively based on urgency or pressure, you make decisions strategically based on alignment with your core priority activities. This requires what I call the priority filter questions. Before committing to any activity, you ask, does this directly support one of my core priority activities? Will this create meaningful progress toward my most important goals? Is this the highest value use of my time right now? Can someone else do this as well as I can? If the answer to these questions is no, then the answer to the opportunity is no, regardless of how appealing it might seem in the moment. This is incredibly difficult because it requires saying no to good opportunities in order to say yes to great opportunities. But here's what most people don't understand about saying no. Every yes to something unimportant is a no to something important. Every minute spent on low priority activities is a minute not available for high priority activities. When you don't actively protect your priorities, everything else will consume them. The most disciplined people are not the busiest people. They're the most selective people. They appear to have more time, not because they work faster, but because they work on fewer things. They create space for what matters by eliminating what doesn't. Protective systems are structures that automatically defend your core priority activities from invasion by urgent but unimportant tasks. These systems operate independently of your willpower or memory, creating barriers that prevent distraction and interruption. The first protective system is time blocking. You schedule specific blocks of time for your core priority activities and treat those blocks as sacred commitments. During priority blocks, you're unavailable for meetings, calls, emails, or any other activities. You protect these blocks with the same intensity you would protect a crucial appointment with your most important client. But time blocking only works if you also implement communication boundaries. You need systems that manage other people's expectations about your availability and response times. This might mean specific hours when you're reachable, predetermined response times for different types of requests, or automatic systems that filter and prioritize incoming communications. The second protective system is environmental design for focus. You create physical and digital environments that support deep work on your priorities, while making distractions difficult or impossible. This might mean a dedicated workspace for important projects, applications that block distracting websites during priority hours, or physical arrangements that minimize interruptions. The third protective system is energy allocation. You schedule your core priority activities during your peak energy periods and batch lower priority tasks during times when your cognitive capacity is naturally lower. Most people do this backwards, handling email and meetings during their best hours and trying to do important work when they're mentally fatigued. Advanced priority domination involves what I call seasonal prioritization. This means recognizing that your core priority activities might change based on your current life phase, business cycle, or development stage. What matters most during startup phases is different from what matters most during growth phases or maturity phases. This requires regular priority audits, where you evaluate whether your current core priority activities still align with your most important goals. You might discover that activities that were crucial 6 months ago are now handled by systems or other people, freeing you to focus on new high-leverage opportunities. Seasonal prioritization also means understanding that some periods require intense focus on a single priority, while other periods allow for more balanced attention across multiple priorities. During product launches, customer acquisition might consume 70% of your attention. During stable periods, you might distribute attention more evenly across development, marketing, and operations. The most advanced practitioners understand that priority domination is ultimately about creating maximum impact with minimum effort. They're not trying to do everything. They're trying to identify the few things that matter most and execute those things with extraordinary consistency and quality. This approach might seem limiting, but it's actually liberating. When you're clear about what matters most, decision-making becomes simple. When you're focused on high-leverage activities, progress becomes visible. When you're protective of your priorities, you create space for the work that actually changes your life. Remember, you cannot do everything, but you can do anything. The question is not whether you have time for your priorities, but whether you have priorities for your time. When you dominate your priorities, instead of letting them be dominated by everything else, you create the foundation for extraordinary achievement. Discipline without clear priorities is just busy work. But discipline applied to the right priorities is the fastest path to any goal you want to achieve. Chapter 13. The Stress Optimization Engine. Most people think stress is the enemy of discipline. They believe that pressure, challenges, and difficult circumstances make disciplined behavior impossible. This is completely backwards. Stress is not the enemy of discipline. It's the forge where real discipline is created. The difference between people who thrive under pressure and people who crumble is not the absence of stress, but their relationship with stress. Disciplined people don't avoid stress. They optimize it. They understand that the right amount of stress actually enhances performance, while the wrong type or amount of stress destroys it. This is based on what psychologists call the Yerkes-Dodson law, which shows that performance increases with stress up to an optimal point, then decreases as stress becomes overwhelming. The goal is not eliminating stress. It's finding and maintaining your optimal stress level for maximum performance. But most people operate at suboptimal stress levels. They're either understressed and therefore unmotivated and complacent, or they're overstressed and therefore anxious, scattered, and reactive. They never find the sweet spot where stress becomes a performance enhancer rather than a performance destroyer. The stress optimization engine is a framework for calibrating your stress levels to maximize discipline and performance. It operates through stress awareness, stress modulation, and stress utilization. Stress awareness means understanding your personal stress signals and patterns. Most people don't recognize stress until it becomes overwhelming. But optimal stress management requires early detection and constant calibration. You need to identify your early warning signs of both understress and overstress. Understress might show up as boredom, procrastination, lack of urgency, or difficulty maintaining focus. Overstress might show up as anxiety, irritability, scattered thinking, or physical tension. You also need to understand your stress triggers and stress relievers. What situations, people, or activities increase your stress? What situations, people, or activities help you recover from stress? This knowledge allows you to engineer your stress levels rather than just reacting to whatever stress happens to occur. Advanced stress awareness involves tracking your stress levels and correlating them with your performance on disciplined behaviors. You might discover that you exercise most consistently when work pressure is moderate but not overwhelming, or that you eat healthiest when you have some structure but not too many competing demands. Stress modulation means actively adjusting your stress levels based on your performance requirements and current capacity. When you're understressed, you increase challenge and urgency. When you're overstressed, you implement recovery and support systems. To increase stress constructively, you can add deadlines, increase stakes, create accountability, or take on new challenges. The key is adding stress in areas that support your goals, rather than stress that works against them. Competition stress can enhance performance, but relationship stress usually hinders it. To decrease stress constructively, you can improve systems, delegate responsibilities, eliminate non-essential activities, or implement stress management techniques. The goal is not eliminating all stress, but removing stress that doesn't serve your performance or growth. But here's the crucial insight. Stress modulation must be proactive rather than reactive. By the time you feel overwhelmed, you're already past optimal performance levels. You need to adjust stress levels based on leading indicators rather than waiting for stress symptoms to appear. This means planning stress cycles rather than just enduring whatever stress occurs. You might deliberately increase stress during focused work periods, then deliberately decrease stress during recovery periods. You create stress rhythms that optimize performance rather than random stress exposure that undermines it. Stress utilization means channeling stress energy toward your disciplined behaviors rather than allowing it to scatter your focus or undermine your consistency. Stress creates energy, and that energy can either fuel productive action or destructive behavior, depending on how you direct it. When you feel stressed, Instead of trying to eliminate the feeling, you immediately channel that energy toward your core priority activities. Anxiety about deadlines becomes fuel for focused work. Frustration about challenges becomes motivation for problem solving. Pressure about goals becomes energy for consistent execution. This requires reframing stress from something that happens to you into something you can use. Instead of, "I'm too stressed to work out," you think, "I'm going to use this stress energy for an intense workout." Instead of, "This pressure is making me anxious," you think, "This pressure is creating urgency for my priorities." The most advanced form of stress utilization is what I call stress seeking. This is when you deliberately expose yourself to manageable stress in controlled ways to build your capacity for handling larger stresses when they occur naturally. This might mean taking cold showers to build stress tolerance, setting aggressive but achievable deadlines to create productive pressure, or taking on challenging projects that stretch your capabilities. You're essentially stress training your nervous system to perform better under pressure. Stress seeking also involves gradually increasing your stress capacity over time. Just like physical exercise, you start with manageable stress levels and progressively increase the challenge as your capacity grows. This builds what I call stress resilience, the ability to maintain disciplined behavior even under significant pressure. But stress optimization goes beyond just managing your individual stress levels. It also involves optimizing the stress environment around you. Some environments create productive stress that enhances performance, while others create destructive stress that undermines it. Productive stress environments have clear expectations, adequate resources, meaningful challenges, and supportive feedback systems. Destructive stress environments have unclear expectations, inadequate resources, overwhelming demands, or critical rather than constructive feedback. You want to spend more time in environments that create optimal stress for your development, and less time in environments that create overwhelming or meaningless stress. This might mean changing jobs, adjusting relationships, or modifying your physical environment to support better stress levels. The ultimate goal of the stress optimization engine is developing what I call anti-fragility, the ability to get stronger from stress rather than just surviving it. Anti-fragile discipline systems actually improve under pressure rather than breaking down. This means building discipline habits that become stronger when challenged, creating systems that improve when stressed, and developing mental models that see pressure as opportunity rather than threat. When your discipline becomes anti-fragile, stress stops being something you endure and becomes something you leverage for accelerated growth. Remember, stress is not your enemy, but unmanaged stress will destroy your discipline. The goal is not avoiding all stress, but optimizing stress levels for maximum performance and growth. When you learn to use stress as fuel rather than fighting it as an obstacle, you unlock a source of energy that most people never access. Disciplined people don't have less stress, they have better stress. They face challenges that matter rather than avoiding challenges entirely. They choose their stress rather than letting stress choose them. Chapter 14. The Evolution and Adaptation Matrix. The biggest mistake people make with discipline is treating it as a fixed system. They find a routine that works, then try to maintain that exact routine forever. But life is constantly changing, and rigid discipline systems break when faced with new circumstances, evolving goals, or natural growth phases. Real discipline is not about rigidity, It's about adaptability. The most disciplined people are constantly evolving their systems, upgrading their approaches, and adapting their methods based on changing circumstances and growing capabilities. This is what I call disciplined flexibility. The ability to maintain your core commitments while adjusting your methods based on what's working and what's not. It's about being consistent with your values and principles while being flexible with your tactics and techniques. The evolution and adaptation matrix is a framework for systematically upgrading your discipline systems as you grow and as your environment changes. It operates through 4 processes: performance tracking, system auditing, strategic pivoting, and capacity expansion. Performance tracking means measuring not just whether you're following your discipline systems, but whether those systems are actually producing the results you want. Most people track compliance without tracking effectiveness. They know whether they did their habits, but not whether those habits are creating meaningful progress. Effective performance tracking requires both leading indicators and lagging indicators. Leading indicators are the daily actions and behaviors that predict future results. Lagging indicators are the actual outcomes and results you achieve over time. For fitness goals, leading indicators might include workout consistency, nutrition compliance, and sleep quality. Lagging indicators might include strength improvements, body composition changes, and energy levels. You track both to understand whether your daily actions are translating into meaningful progress. But performance tracking goes deeper than just results. You also need to track the sustainability and satisfaction of your discipline systems. A system that produces results but makes you miserable is not truly successful because it won't be maintainable long term. This means tracking your energy levels, stress levels, enjoyment, and overall life satisfaction alongside your goal-specific metrics. The best discipline systems enhance your quality of life while moving you toward your goals, rather than requiring you to sacrifice well-being for achievement. System auditing means regularly evaluating your discipline systems to identify what's working well, what's working poorly, and what's missing entirely. Most people never audit their systems because they assume that if something worked before, it will continue working forever. But your needs change as you develop. Systems that were perfect for beginners might hold you back at intermediate levels. Methods that worked during low-stress periods might fail during high-stress periods. Approaches that served you in one life phase might be inadequate for the next life phase. Effective system auditing involves asking key questions. Which of my discipline habits are still challenging me? Which behaviors have become so automatic that they no longer require conscious effort? Which systems are creating friction or resistance? Which areas of my life need more structure and which need more flexibility? You also need to audit your systems against your current goals and values. Sometimes your discipline systems are working perfectly, but your goals have evolved and your systems haven't caught up. You might have excellent systems for building muscle, but inadequate systems for building flexibility. You might have strong work discipline, but weak relationship discipline. Strategic pivoting means making deliberate changes to your discipline systems based on your performance data and system audit results. This is not about abandoning discipline when things get difficult. It's about upgrading your approach when better methods become available. Strategic pivoting might involve replacing ineffective habits with more powerful alternatives. Maybe daily meditation isn't working for you, but weekly meditation retreats are transformative. Maybe gym workouts feel like a burden, but outdoor activities energize you. It might involve adjusting the intensity or frequency of existing habits based on your current capacity and circumstances. During busy seasons, you might reduce workout duration but maintain consistency. During growth phases, you might increase learning activities but maintain work-life balance. Or it might involve adding new systems to address gaps that have become apparent. Maybe you have excellent productivity discipline, but poor recovery discipline. Maybe you have strong individual discipline, but weak social discipline. The key to successful pivoting is making one change at a time and testing it thoroughly before making additional changes. Most people try to overhaul their entire system simultaneously, which creates chaos and makes it impossible to determine what's working. Capacity expansion means systematically increasing your ability to handle more complex or demanding discipline challenges. This is the opposite of the common approach of keeping discipline systems static once they're working. Just like physical fitness, discipline capacity grows through progressive overload. You start with manageable challenges and gradually increase the difficulty as your capacity grows. Someone who can maintain 3 consistent habits can eventually maintain 5 or 7 habits. Someone who can focus for 30 minutes can eventually focus for 90 minutes. But capacity expansion must be strategic rather than arbitrary. You want to expand in directions that support your most important goals, rather than just expanding for the sake of expansion. More discipline is not automatically better discipline if it's not aligned with your priorities. Capacity expansion also involves developing discipline in new domains. Maybe you have strong physical discipline but weak financial discipline. Maybe you have excellent work discipline but poor relationship discipline. True discipline mastery involves developing comprehensive life discipline rather than just excelling in one area. The most advanced practitioners understand that discipline evolution never stops. They see themselves as perpetual students who are constantly learning new methods, testing new approaches, and refining their systems. They understand that the discipline systems that got them to their current level won't necessarily get them to the next level. This requires what I call disciplined humility, the willingness to abandon methods that are no longer serving you, even if those methods were successful in the past. It means being more committed to results than to methods, more loyal to growth than to comfort. But evolution and adaptation must be balanced with consistency and stability. You can't be constantly changing everything, or you'll never build the momentum that discipline requires. The key is maintaining consistency in your core principles and values while adapting your methods and tactics. This means having non-negotiable foundations that never change alongside flexible approaches that evolve regularly. Your commitment to health might be non-negotiable, but your specific exercise and nutrition approaches can adapt based on what's working best. Advanced discipline practitioners also understand that evolution is not just individual, it's environmental. As you grow and change, you need to evolve your environment, relationships, and systems to match your new level of discipline and capability. This might mean seeking more challenging opportunities that match your expanded capacity. It might mean upgrading your social circle to include people who operate at higher levels. It might mean changing your environment to support more sophisticated discipline systems. Remember, discipline is not about finding the perfect system and maintaining it forever. Discipline is about developing the capacity to create and maintain systems that serve your current goals and circumstances, then evolving those systems as you grow. The most disciplined people are not the most rigid people, they're the most adaptable people. They maintain their core commitments while constantly upgrading their methods. They're consistent with their values while being flexible with their tactics. Chapter 15. The Discipline Mastery Integration. Everything you've learned in this audiobook means nothing unless you integrate it into a cohesive system that transforms how you operate every single day. Most people consume self-improvement content like entertainment, learning concepts without implementing systems. But discipline is not about knowledge. It's about application. The difference between someone who knows about discipline and someone who lives discipline is integration. Integration means taking all the frameworks, principles, and techniques you've learned and weaving them into a comprehensive approach that becomes your new way of being. This final chapter is not about learning new concepts. It's about creating your personal discipline operating system, an integrated approach that makes discipline your default mode of operation rather than something you have to force yourself to do. The discipline mastery integration operates through 5 phases: foundation, establishment, system synchronization, momentum acceleration, mastery refinement, and legacy creation. Foundation establishment means implementing the core principles that everything else builds upon. You cannot skip this phase or rush through it because everything else depends on having solid fundamentals. Your foundation consists of 3 non-negotiable elements: identity, clarity, environmental alignment, and minimum viable consistency. These are not goals you work toward. They are prerequisites you establish immediately. Identity clarity means deciding who you are becoming and committing to that identity, regardless of your current circumstances or past patterns. You are not someone trying to become disciplined. You are someone who is disciplined. This identity becomes the filter through which you make all decisions. Environmental alignment means systematically designing your physical, digital, and social environments to support disciplined behavior while eliminating triggers for undisciplined behavior. Your environment should make the right choices automatic and the wrong choices difficult. Minimum viable consistency means identifying the smallest possible disciplined actions you can take every single day, regardless of circumstances. These become your non-negotiable baseline that preserves momentum even during challenging periods. Once your foundation is solid, you move to system synchronization. This means connecting all your discipline systems so they reinforce each other rather than competing for resources or creating conflicts. Your morning routine should prepare you for productive work. Your work systems should support your health goals. Your health habits should enhance your energy for personal development. Your personal development should improve your work performance. Everything connects and supports everything else. System synchronization also means timing your various discipline activities to optimize energy and minimize friction. You don't schedule demanding mental work during your natural energy crashes. You don't try to build multiple challenging habits during the same time periods. Instead, you create discipline rhythms that work with your natural patterns rather than against them. High energy periods are for your most important priorities. Medium energy periods are for routine maintenance activities. Low energy periods are for recovery and preparation. Momentum acceleration is about systematically increasing the challenge and complexity of your discipline systems as your capacity grows. This phase prevents stagnation and ensures continuous growth rather than just maintenance. You progressively add new challenges, increase existing standards, and tackle more sophisticated goals. But this expansion is strategic rather than random. Each new challenge builds on previous successes and supports your overall vision. Momentum acceleration also involves leveraging compound effects across different areas of your life. Your physical discipline creates energy for mental discipline. Your mental discipline creates focus for relationship discipline. Your relationship discipline creates support for professional discipline. As these areas reinforce each other, your overall discipline capacity grows exponentially rather than linearly. Small improvements in each area create massive improvements in your total life experience. Mastery refinement is about developing discipline expertise that operates automatically and adapts dynamically to changing circumstances. At this phase, discipline becomes effortless because it's integrated into your identity and supported by sophisticated systems. You no longer need to think about whether to take disciplined actions. You simply take them because that's who you are. You no longer need external accountability because your internal standards are higher than any external expectations. Mastery refinement also means developing the ability to coach and mentor others in developing discipline. When you can teach something effectively, you truly understand it. Teaching discipline to others deepens your own understanding and commitment. But true mastery is not about perfection. It's about anti-fragility. Master-level discipline gets stronger under pressure rather than breaking down. It adapts to challenges rather than being derailed by them. It evolves with growth rather than becoming rigid with success. Legacy creation is the highest level of discipline mastery. This is when your disciplined life becomes a model and inspiration for others. Your consistency creates permission for others to pursue their own excellence. Your standards raise the standards of everyone around you. Legacy creation means understanding that discipline is not just about personal achievement. It's about contributing to something larger than yourself. The habits you build, the standards you maintain, and the example you set all influence the culture and expectations of your family, community, and profession. At this level, discipline becomes effortless because it's fueled by purpose beyond personal benefit. You maintain high standards, not just because they serve you, but because they serve others who are watching and learning from your example. But legacy creation requires balancing achievement with sustainability. The most inspiring examples of discipline are people who maintain excellence over decades, not people who burn brightly for months, then flame out. This means building discipline systems that enhance rather than deplete your life energy. Systems that make you stronger rather than wearing you down. Systems that create more opportunities for others rather than just serving your individual goals. The ultimate integration of discipline mastery is when disciplined behavior becomes so natural that it doesn't feel like discipline anymore. It feels like self-expression. It feels like freedom. It feels like the most natural way to live. When you reach this level, you understand that discipline was never about restriction or force. It was about creating the capacity to live according to your deepest values and highest aspirations. It was about becoming the person you always knew you could be. Most people never experience this level of integration because they treat discipline as a temporary project rather than a lifelong practice. They try to get disciplined rather than become disciplined. They focus on specific goals rather than comprehensive transformation. But when you commit to true discipline mastery, when you integrate all these principles into a cohesive way of being, everything changes. Your capacity expands. your confidence grows. Your impact increases. Your life becomes a masterpiece of intentional design rather than accidental circumstance. Remember, discipline is not something you do, it's someone you become. It's not about forcing yourself to act differently. It's about becoming the type of person who naturally acts in disciplined ways. The frameworks in this audiobook are not just techniques to try, they are principles to embody. The goal is not temporary behavior change, it's permanent identity transformation. The outcome is not just achieving your goals, it's becoming the type of person who consistently achieves whatever goals matter most. You now have everything you need to force yourself to be disciplined, not through willpower or motivation, but through systems, identity, environment, and integration. The question is not whether these principles work. The question is whether you will work them. Your disciplined life starts now, not tomorrow, not next week, not when circumstances are perfect. Right now, with the next choice you make, the next action you take, the next opportunity to prove to yourself who you really are. Discipline is not about perfection. Discipline is about direction. And the direction you choose in this moment will determine everything that follows.